What's going on, guys? Jason Frausto for TennisUnleashed.net. And in this video, I'm breaking down Karue Sell's tennis game, both tactically and technically. He's at an all-time high of 290 in the world now. So let's look at some of the things he needs to work on to continue to climb up the rankings. Just before we dive into the first point, a couple things to remember. We did this video back in May of 2024, originally when he was around 500 in the world, analyzed this game and broke down a bunch of things that I thought can improve. He has since improved some of those things on his own, right? He's worked a lot on his footwork and movement especially, and his fitness and those components are paying a lot of dividends for him. So now he's up to a career high of 290 in the world. We want to revisit 5 months later his same game and see what are some of the things he's improved and what things does he need to continue to work on. All right, so let's jump into the first point here, right? We got Karue in the Tiburon Challenger versus Nishesh Basavareddy, right? A little bit of background on Basavareddy. First time I saw him play was when he was 9 years old. He was playing at Smith Tennis in the Indianapolis, Indiana area, coached under Brian Smith. And at that same exact practice that we were attending that day, Rajiv Ram was hitting in drills, a grown Rajiv Ram, adult number one in the world doubles player, right? With Nishesh at that time, who was 9 years old, hitting in these drills with younger players that were all training at Smith Tennis at the time. You could see Shesh especially was going to be a very special player. How good he would be, you don't exactly know, but when you see a 9-year-old rallying at that level, you know they have a chance to be a very good player rallying with an adult, right? So before we break the point down, let's let it play once in real time. Karue returning on the near side, Shesh serving. Nice backhand return, a little short there. Nishesh pounds the backhand, Karue cross. We get a line, forehand cross. A lot of speed in these points, right? A lot of big hitting. Nishesh with the nice angle cross. Karue counters that. Karue on the wide sliding forehand there. Shesh pounds a forehand cross, pounds a backhand cross. Karue chases that down. And then Karue down the line here. Shesh pounds the backhand cross again. And then that point wraps up, right? So let's go ahead and break this down now, guys, and actually look at this. Again, Karue returning on the near side, Nishesh serving on the far side. And one of the biggest areas I've seen Karue improve his game is really his defensive skills and his ability to survive 5 aggressive or running shots from his opponents. That means when Karue has to run, he's gotten a lot better on the run. That was one of my criticisms a little bit in that previous video from May of 2024. Karue really couldn't survive more than 1 or 2 aggressive shots to the corners of the court from his opponent before he'd break down and make errors or have trouble with those shots. But if you look at these points now, the first one we're going to look at here, he's starting to be able to survive 5 running shots in a point before things start to break down for him. And that's what the best players in the world at the top of the game can do. So let's again break this down here quick. Karue returning, Shesh serving, serves down the tee. Karue here. Pretty nice athletic return of serve, right? We've got a serve that's above the height of our head pretty much at this point at contact, right? We can see that super high up. Tough to handle a serve like this that's above the height of our head. Karue handles it very well right here though, right? Hits it back. It's a little bit short. So even in those high reaching positions, we typically want to see the players able to handle those types of serves where they're above their head and still get some type of depth. So something to work on maybe a little bit in the future. Shesh pounds that first one, but he goes to Karue's backhand side. And again, Karue's backhand side, we know it's a big time strength for him, and it's going to continue to be as he continues to play these tournaments. So even when Nishesh gets aggressive to Karue's backhand, it's probably not going to do a whole lot to him. So he goes cross there. Shesh picks that up. Karue cross deep with the forehand, and Shesh middle deep. And this is where things start to open up and we start to see Karue's defensive skills. So, we hit 9 or 10 shots before we even start to get to the running shots in this point. But Nishesh has a forehand here, right, where he can move forward with his body weight here off Karue's shorter shot. And Nishesh, after all these balls are rallied, decides he's going to open the court up and angle it off a little bit and get Karue running. And that's what he does. Karue has to sprint from the middle of the court to the side of the court out here and still try to hit a shot that doesn't get him in trouble. So he does that, right? And then hits the ball back cross, hits a pretty good shot. Nishesh, though, big angle. And again, Karue's got to go from a position here and suddenly sprint out, slide into a forehand, which is something that we're seeing from Karue. That's a little bit new or different. We're not used to seeing Karue hitting forehands while he's sliding. That's something he's added as his fitness and speed and confidence in his movement has gotten better here in the last few months. So he's really worked on it, improved its sliding forehand. And then Nishesh again, though, right? pounds another forehand, but instead of just using pure depth, he's really trying to angle Karue off the court to try to expose issues with movement. But what Nishesh is finding out, right? Karue's improved his movement, so it's not a big deal for Karue to consistently, again, cover another shot. And then Shesh takes the backhand from here. He's about to spank it cross court to this side, which means Karue is moving from one side of the court over to the other. And if players struggle with movement, even at the highest levels, a lot of times this is where they'll make mistakes or hit weak shots when they have to move from one side of the court to the other. So let's see what happens. Shesh does that to Karue. Karue on the back foot after sprinting from one side to the other, but is able to get it cross and handle that ball pretty well. Shesh changes direction again, so makes Karue move from this side, right, over to the opposite side. That's 2 shots in a row. We're moving from one side to the other. This will, again, usually expose issues with movement. Karue sliding into this forehand once again. Really wide stance. We're seeing more athleticism displayed from Karue. And a lot of that's his confidence in his increased movement abilities, right? He didn't have that confidence or those abilities before. Putting in some serious work on it and paying off a lot of dividends here. And then he hits that. And then Shesh drives him to the other side. So again, another from one side of the court to the other. And then Karue finally makes an error here. Let's go back to that error for 1 second. So Karue had to move from this side of the court here again to the opposite side, which again will draw errors typically or shorter, weaker balls. But in this situation, he still gets there, goes for the slice backhand this time, right? So it changes a little bit. So he goes to the slice. But the type of ball that Nishesh had to hit, this is kind of the next level for Karue's movement. So I didn't get into this in the previous video because it wasn't appropriate at that point. But we can see in this point that Karue is able to survive 5 aggressive or running shots from his opponent before the 6th one here actually finally caused a mistake. So that's an incredible level. But what Nishesh did is what gets a lot of guys to make mistakes even at the highest level of the game. He did 2 things that affect players. He hit a deep ball, right? 3/4 court to the baseline is what I like to call zone 3. So he hit a deep ball landing in zone 3. And a ball also within 2 or less feet of the single sideline, which I like to call small targets. So in this situation, he's sort of doing what I like to call the double whammy. It's a small target, close to the sidelines relatively, and it's deep at the same time and also hit aggressively. These types of shots are the shots that typically cause a player to make errors. So the next step for Karue in his movement journey, right? He's now surviving 5 aggressive shots from opponents. The next step is how many of these small target deep balls, can you survive in a point before you make an error, right? We're going to need that number to go up in the future. That movement needs to continue to improve and get better. And he's got the off season coming up to do it. We want that number to increase for the future. Let's look at the second point now. All right, so before we break this point down, let's let it play once in real time. Shesh serving on the far side. Serves it to Karue, middle short return. Shesh aggressive with the forehand right away. Some forehand trading just back and forth, smacking forehands to each other back and forth. Shesh opens it up right there, gets Karue running. Karue with the slice, which shows confidence in his defense. The fact that he's slicing on the run, it's a really good sign. So again, in this point as well, it took a while before they really opened things up and Shesh started going closer to the sidelines. And there we see that double whammy to finish off the point. So let's go ahead and let's break this down again. We got Nishesh this time serving again. Not a fan of that little hitch in the beginning of his serve. Karue starts with a little bit of a short return on the forehand side. Nishesh is inside the court getting ready to get aggressive with this shot right here. And just kind of hits big pace, middle short here. So Karue sets up really comfortably. Trades cross. We got Nishesh cross. And that was really the first one right there when Nishesh kind of opened things up. So go back for 1 second. It's right here with this forehand. Nishesh decides to hit a little bit more of an angle. Instead of hitting these balls to the middle court, right? Starts to hit a little bit more of an angle on his shot, trying to push Karue and get him off the court to make either a mistake or hit a really weak ball that Nishesh can get aggressive with on the next ball, okay? So Karue lines up the forehand here, hits it really good deep and cross. Shesh goes cross even a little bit more to the side of the court, trying to open it up. And then from here, we can see now is Karue really under fire, right? So this is the first one where Karue's really running for the ball. And it's because Nishesh is hitting a target that's a small target really close to the sideline. So he's forcing some movement on Karue. So this is where Karue gets into his survive 5 mode right here. So we've got surviving number 1 on the dead run comfortably. Shesh moves him from one side. We can see he's going to go to the other side here. That's surviving number 2 with the running slice backhand. Not easy to do. Shesh here now decides, okay, I've run you from one side of the court to the other. It hasn't really produced the ball that I'm looking for. You've sliced. I'm just going to chip this cross. And then Karue here, I would say, could be a little bit better with his movement up to this particular slice. A little bit of a lazy move to the ball. I'd like to see him get up there just a little bit faster to hit a little bit better quality slice, because Shesh here, right, Karue hits this short little slice, and now Shesh steps up and moves forward on his own slice. He's got his body weight moving up into the court, so he's going to get a little bit more on this slice. And you'll see he's going to move Karue from, again, this side of the court over to the other side, which will be the third moving type shot Karue has to hit in the point. And there it is. Karue off the back foot, off the depth of the slice, but keeps going. And now Shesh is like, okay, you've given me a little bit weaker ball to hit, so I'm going to step up and crank this backhand here and make you hit number 4, where you're moving significantly, right? And he's got to hit that one there. We'll look at that one more time. Moving Karue from one side again to the other, but Karue remaining very strong in these situations. He's really, really improved his movement game big time. And then Shesh here off the deep ball middle from Karue. And this is a really good backhand, at least in my opinion. Good quality shot, zone 3 on Shesh's side. Deep with some heavy spin, right? A little bit of spin and hitting through the court. Shesh, though, lines up the backhand and takes, again, a small target right here. Really risky off that shot that Karue hit to him, and forces Karue to move for the 5th time significantly from this side to this side right here. Karue does it. Gets over there with pretty good balance for the most part. Hits a little bit short, though. And this is a chance for Shesh right here to really feast on the next ball and do some serious damage and really go for it. So this is going to be number 6 on the move right here to Karue. I'm number 6, right? In this point, significant movement. Karue lunging and reaching for this ball. We can barely see him in the screen. And what did Shesh have to do to Karue, though, again, to force a situation where Karue's going to make an error here? We can see the error right there. Shesh had to pull the double whammy again. So again, that means we're hitting, right? Shesh is hitting 2 or less feet from the single sideline, a small target that also lands in zone number 3, which is 3/4 court to the baseline, which is really tough to pull those shots off. But as we talked about in the first point, if Karue wants to up the level of his game, his movement game, another notch, he wants to get into kind of that territory of the best movers in the world on tour or be close to it, he's going to have to start to survive these small target balls that are landing in zone 3 aggressively. He's really dramatically, I'm really impressed. Karue has really improved his ability to survive 5 balls. This is not something he could do in the past. Hats off to you, my friend. It's awesome. It's incredible. But the next step is, can you start surviving these small targets deep in the court that are aggressive? How many in a row of those can you survive? I want to see 2 or 3 that you can survive, because once you're able to do that, you're going to put a lot of pressure on people with your feet, and they're going to make a lot of mistakes. All right, let's move on to the next point now. So before we jump into the next point, I want to talk about something with Karue's forehand technique, and that's the amount of elasticity or lag that he achieves on his forehand side. It's lacking a little bit. And I'm saying this because it's costing him in certain situations where he's trying to either finish points off with aggressive shots, or he's receiving defensive shots where he's on the move and his quality of ball is suffering a little bit because of this technical deficiency. So if he's able to implement the things that I talk about, he's really going to continue to skyrocket up the rankings, because we know his movement has improved a ton in the last 5 months and his backhand is rock solid. So let's jump into the next point now. All right, before we break this down, let's let it play once in real time. All right, so Karue returning on the near side, right? Shesh serving again, wide. Deep forehand return from Karue, big backhand cross, getting Shesh on the run. Backs up, inside in forehand, cross forehand a little bit weak there. Cross forehand and just makes the easy error and kind of looks over at his box a little bit frustrated. Why am I making that mistake? And we're going to talk about it right now. And I think it's something he can easily implement in the offseason. So let's look at the point now, guys. Break it down. Again, Shesh serving, serves wide. Karue moves inside the baseline in zone 3 to return this, takes it early, right, trying to take Shesh's time away. Same thing Shesh did to him on second serve returns. Hits a pretty darn good return here, pretty deep into zone 3 to back up Shesh. Shesh hits it down the line weak to Karue's backhand side, which is a pretty big mistake. Usually don't want to give Karue something he can easily attack like this, right, because he's confident and loves the backhand and just does the damage right there. as soon as you give Karue a backhand that sits short, right? A lot of guys might not be able to hit rockets, but he can hit rockets with an angle there. Damages Shesh, gets him on the run on defense, and now Karue's hoping for some type of short ball, right? So again, there. Shesh floats it back deep, but Karue goes to hit the forehand, takes it inside in heavy, and then has a forehand right there. And that's one I'd like to see the technical change take place on. So let's go back to this. Hits inside in, Shesh here, right? Forehand, weak, short, off Karue's heavy forehand down the line. And Karue has a chance here to really get aggressive with this shot. And if he adds this technical change, makes this maybe in the offseason here before 2025, his forehand's going to be nuclear. And if that happens and he continues to improve his movement and touches up that serve just a tiny bit, watch out, because he could definitely make it inside the top 100 in the world at that point, because the forehand will be as lethal as the backhand, if not better. So here's what I'm talking about. When players go through their loop on their forehand or their preparation, players get into a position, right? Pat the dog, whatever you want to call it at this point. I call it touch the cart, where the tip of the racket, right, is off to the right of their hitting hand. It's going this direction. So we can clearly see that with Karue as well. But what's happening on these forehands where he has a chance to attack, when the tip of the racket gets here, I talk about this a lot in our forehand technique breakdowns of pros. That tip right there needs to end up behind your hitting elbow a little bit before the racket moves forward to attack that shot. So look at the tip here, and then let's watch, how many frames we got. This is as far as the tip of his racket goes. It's nowhere behind the elbow getting that big whip and leg and that big flip on the forehand that you see from the Jokers of the world, the Sinners of the world, the Alcarazes of the world. Karue could get more tip flip on his forehand. Typically when he goes inside in or inside out, he has enough. But when he's on his own deuce side of the court over here, trying to go cross court or down the line, he's typically lacking the proper amount of tip flip, and I'll talk about why in a second. But let's watch the result of Karue's shot. Just kind of sits short, right? It's kind of a push. And I'm not saying that to insult the guy, right? He killed me on a tennis court. I'm saying this purely from an analyst point of view, right? So Shesh should not fear this and doesn't. And Karue has another ball here where Shesh is hitting, though, another weak shot. And this is the one we get the error on, right? So let's look at it again. Same exact situation almost. Tip of the racket gets to about here. And then does it get behind the elbow as it moves forward? Let's find out. Go frame by frame. The angle's a little bit tricky, but I'll tell you this. That tip is nowhere near behind his hitting elbow in this situation. And it needs to have that amount of elasticity on the shot to be a big weapon for him. So watch what happens. Makes the unforced error, looks over at his box, pretty frustrated, right? Let's move on to the next point now. All right, so before we break this one down, let's let it play once in real time, guys. Shesh serving far side. Karue switched shirts in the second set. Forehand inside in aggressive. Shesh cross short. And then Karue makes the easy error there, and he's frustrated with that, and he should be, because he doesn't want to make a mistake on that ball. So again, Shesh serving, wide serve. Karue inside the baseline, taking time. Hits a nice aggressive return down the line. Gets Shesh on defense, really stretched. Hard to see with that kind of camera there in the sun at that time of day. But defense. So Karue moves around, gets ready to spank the inside in forehands. And as I talked about, his tip flip right here, okay, when he's hitting inside in or inside out, he tends to get big enough tip flip, and most players do because of the way that your body has to kind of rotate on the shot. So watch this here. And there it is, right? Tip of the racket behind the elbow. He clearly gets it on that side. Again, most people do. He's not getting it, though, on his regular cross-court shots from the deuce side and down the lines on the deuce side most of the time. So you can see where the tip of the racket is right now, and then watch the racket move forward a couple frames. This one was a little bit better than the last one, but tip of the racket not getting behind the elbow, lacking that elasticity of somebody like a Sinner and Alcaraz, Djokovic, doesn't matter. Pretty much all the guys in the top 100 at this point. And then sprays it, out of bounds and is frustrated, head down. The reaction, obviously, because he knows that's a routine, easy ball, and he should make that one, 99 times out of 100. This is just that one situation where he missed, but he needs that elasticity to start making that shot. Let's move on to the next point now. All right, so before we jump into this point, let's let it play once in real time. Karue serving this time, deuce side here. Goes a little bit wide. Shesh, really good deep forehand return. Big aggressive cross from Shesh. Shesh again, deep aggressive cross, spanks the backhand cross. and then spanks the backhand down the line. So let's see where that forehand, right, might be failing us just a little bit. It might be in a different way in this point. So again, breaking it down, Karue serving on the near side, serves it wide to Sesh's forehand. Shesh spanks it deep to the middle third of the court, which is one of the most effective returns on tour, whether it's first serves or second serves, just hitting it right up the gut, right at the guy, because they can't get out of the way on time a lot of times. So it's a very effective return just to blitz it right back at them. Karue does a decent job handling, but ends up accidentally hitting it short on Sesh's side inside zone 1, which means Shesh can move his body weight forward and really get aggressive, and he does that right here. Open stance forehand. And just one myth on the forehand in particular, guys, I hear this all the time with parents and younger players that think because we're moving forward in the court that we always have to use a closed stance or a neutral stance, whatever it is, but we have to step into the ball. You can step into balls and still do what Nishesh is doing right here, which is hitting an open stance when we're stepping forward into the court. If you want to see those specific numbers for neutral stance, open stance, closed stance, semi-open stance, we have those in our forehand course at tennisunleashed.net. Go sign up for that. You can get the data on exactly what percentages of forehands are hit from those four stances at the tour level. But again, big myth here that we have to step into the ball, with a neutral stance or closed stance when we're getting short balls. Shesh doesn't do it right there. And then he spanks that pretty hard cross. Karue hits that again short with a lot of pace. Shesh doesn't like that one, but ends up getting it really deep. And this is where that lack of elasticity on the forehand side is going to hurt Karue a little bit. Tough to see at the bottom of the screen, but Karue's racket tip, again, pointed off to the right here a little bit. But the elasticity component, look at that. The amount of lag that Karue's getting is severely lacking. We're not getting the tip of that racket behind the hitting elbow, which means we don't have a lot of elasticity on the shot, and the shot is going to be weak as it crosses the net. And it is. It sits up for Nishesh to pound a backhand right here. So that's one thing that's really important too. It's not just about making errors, it's the quality of your ball. Is your technique affecting the quality of your shot? Is your shot just sitting there for your opponent to destroy on the next ball because we don't have enough elasticity on that forehand side? And the answer in Karue's case on this defensive shot is absolutely 100%. Yes, he needs to work on this. So Shesh spanks the backhand right there. Spanks it to Karue, kind of hitting, I think, again, the double whammy or close to it. We'll call it a single because the depth wasn't there, but he hits a small target, just not deep, and Karue has to run this down, and he does, and then Shesh pounds the next one to the open court and finishes with the winner. But what set that entire thing up was the lack of elasticity on this defensive type of forehand right here, where Karue's on his back foot and not getting a lot of lag on the forehand side. And then he ends up hitting a ball where Nishesh can just feast and step in on that one. And then Shesh confidently finishes right here. So it's not just about mistakes. A lot of times it's about the quality of your ball. And if Karue makes this improvement, like I said, watch out. All right, let's move on to the next point now. All right, so before we break this point down, let's let it play once in real time. Karue serving ad side, this time near side. Shesh, short return. Karue inside in, pretty aggressive right there. Cross, heavy high. Nishesh pounds it. Karue down the line. Shesh, backhand cross, slice from Karue. Nishesh down the line, aggressive. And then there's the air from Karue, right? So let's just kind of jump in and break this down. We can see Karue got pretty frustrated after that point because it was a big point. 4-5 serving and 30-15 Nishesh in the game, right? So again, Karue serves here, guys. Shesh, weak return. Good chance for Karue to get aggressive. And we've talked about this. When he has to hit an inside out forehand for Karue, right? Or an inside in here, he does get typically the right amount of tip flip, which most people get a pretty large tip flip, but I need it to be bigger, and I need it to be bigger when we're getting these deuce side balls, going cross and going down the line. So takes that, hits a good ball. Shesh uncomfortable there, but gets pretty good depth on Karue right here. So let's look at Karue's tip flip on this particular forehand right here, guys. You can see it pretty small, right? Not enough. Sits, and as soon as that sits right there, right? Again, this one right here. As soon as this ball sits, because he doesn't have enough elasticity on this forehand, as soon as this one sits, Nishesh just jumps on it. And he jumps on it because the ball is now just sitting up. When you have the elasticity on it, the ball doesn't just sit there for you to pound it. It usually goes through the court a little bit better, but because it's lacking that, it sits, and now Nishesh can get aggressive, and he does. Boom, big one. Now we've got Karue on defense, right? Sliding to the forehand because of the previous shot. The quality of it hurt him, did damage. Here's another sitter. Karue actually guides it down the line incredibly well, but Nishesh lining this up, pounds it, right? So it all started with that first one, the lack of quality, pounds it. Now we're hitting a slice backhand on the run. Nishesh comfortably moving inside the court. And then again here on the defensive ball, Karue moving, right? Tip of the racket here right now, guys. And there's a lack of that flip. Loses control. And then there's the error. But it all started, a couple balls back where he had that one with not enough tip flip on it. It sat up and Shesh pounded it. So this is an area of the forehand I really want to see Karue get better with. How you achieve a better tip flip, and this is the solution for Karue, is when you get the racket into this position where it's laid back, right, with the tip like this, everything's supposed to be relaxed, and it is. But the next step from here is how do you get the racket to go from here to get it to go back here? All right. And I'll give you the solution right now that works for most people. There's a lot of different ways you can do this. But for most people, they make the mistake of taking their arm and just moving their arm forward towards the ball. And that's why they don't get the big flip on the forehand side. What you need to do are one of two things. These two things usually solve the problem. You can either plant your body and just start to rotate your hips with a relaxed arm and your legs, right? And that usually gets you enough of a flip. Or you can do solution number two, which personally works for me very well, but is not for everybody. I will take my right shoulder on purpose, and I will purposely pull with my right shoulder, leading the shot right in the beginning. So I make the initial pull of the racket forward with my right shoulder pulling instead of the lower arm like the hand and the wrist and the forearm. Pull with the right shoulder while keeping the arm relaxed. And that will usually get you also a very large tip flip. So if Karue implements one of those two solutions, he'll be able to fix this forehand and get the elasticity that he's looking for. And ultimately, that's going to improve his shot quality and make him a better player and let him have that forehand be the weapon that it can be. All right, guys, that wraps up this video on Karue Sell's technical and tactical tennis game. If you found this video helpful today or you feel like you learned something, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. I'm Jason Frausto for TennisUnleashed.net. I'll see you next time.